Now, meanwhile, a contingent of Japanese troops landed in South Sudan on Monday on a mission that could see them embroiled in their country's first ever overseas fighting since World War II. The soldiers will join UN peacekeepers and build infrastructure in the country torn apart by years of civil war. They will be allowed to respond to urgent calls from UN staff and aid workers. There are also plans to let them guard UN bases which have been attacked during the fighting. The deployment of 350 soldiers is in line with Japanese security legislation to expand the military's role overseas. Critics in Japan have said the move risks pulling the troops into conflict for the first time in more than 7 decades. Right now, the stability of South Sudan is likely to feature in the agenda of the East African Legislative Assembly, EALA, which begins sitting in Nairobi this afternoon. 2 pieces of legislation, the EAC Gender Equality and Development Bill 2016, as well as the EAC Polythene Materials Control Bill 2016, are top on the agenda. However, lack of financing of the East African community by partner states is also likely to dominate discussions following concerns that the EAC organs cannot run programs because they are cash-strapped. Speaking ahead of the sitting, EALA Speaker Daniel Kidega also asked the South Sudan government and regional governments to push for peace in the region's youngest nation.
South Sudan is part of the East African community. Whatever happens in any part of the East African community affects the totality of the community. The crisis in South Sudan is a call for the EAC as the newest member to attend to. You may be aware that when we realized some political challenges in the Republic of Burundi, the EAC swung into action through the summit and the secretariat, and indeed, as well as EALA was concerned. Therefore, we as an assembly are very concerned about the political confusion in our newest member state, the Republic of South Sudan, and we appeal to all the concerned parties, particularly the elected government which sits in Khartoum, to make sure peace prevails and provides opportunity to the South Sudanese to be fully integrated into the East African process. The details of why troops were withdrawn are way beyond my sphere of understanding. We leave issues of generals to the generals.
That right there is the Speaker of EALA, Mr. Daniel Kidega. And let's talk a little bit more about this with members of the Legislative Assembly. And I'm so glad this morning to be joined by Honorable Peter Mathuki and Honorable Nancy Abisai. Thank you so much both for making the time. And we're really honored that the Legislative Assembly is now sitting in Nairobi over the next 2 weeks. So let's talk about that agenda in general, Honorable Mathuki. What do we expect to come out of the sittings over the next 2 weeks?
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting us to talk to the nation on what the agenda of the Assembly will be in the next 2 weeks. In fact, as an Assembly, we'll not even be here for 2 weeks, but likely to be here for almost 3 weeks, because after the sittings, we will go for the inter-parliamentary games that involves all the members. And that is part of the awareness that we create as an Assembly. So what I would say is that as East African Legislative Assembly, is an assembly, of course, comprising of now the 5 partner states. Of course, now we are 6 with South Sudan. But South Sudan has not yet sent their members, so we still continue sitting as members from the 5 partner states. And it was a decision of the Assembly, again, through a resolution, that we should be doing rotational sittings. The rotational sittings means we go to every partner state in every other sitting. And the intention of this was to make sure that we interface with the stakeholders of the community, and that is in line with the treaty, because these are people-driven integration process. And therefore, when we will be here, we will also be meeting different stakeholders. We'll be able to meet the national members of parliament. We'll be able to meet with the executive. We'll be able to meet with the business community. We'll be able to meet with the civil society and other stakeholders so that we understand what are the issues. So that as we debate, as we do our business in parliament, we don't need to talk to ourselves, but we'll be talking informed by what stakeholders will be thinking.
Yeah.
And that is why we are here as EALA. In the next two sittings, the sittings themselves, this afternoon, 2:30, we'll be commencing our plenary sittings. And ordinarily, the practice has been, as we start, the opening should be done by the president of that particular partner state. In this particular case, we're informed, of course, His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, will be able to open this next Tuesday.
Yes.
And again, we always do that depending on the calendars. And therefore, we'll be starting with our sittings normal this afternoon. And a number of things will be happening, and a number of things, and one of them is, depending on the committees. Our parliament operates through committees. We have 7 standing committees.
Yeah.
These committees include the Accounts Committee, the General Purpose Committee, Legal Committee, which I chair. I'm the chair of the Committee of Legal Rules, the Committee on Trade and Investment, the Committee on Agriculture, Tourism, and of course the Commission.
Yeah.
And therefore, these committees will be now meeting at their capacities, of course, as committees to inform. And one of the key, and this is important, and I'm sure my colleague will be able to talk to it in more detail, is the gender bill,
right. So
which will be important.
Yes, so let's hold that thought and let's hear from Honorable Abisai, because you are the mover of the Gender Equality and Development Bill 2016. Talk to us about that bill, why it is important. We know of perhaps the struggles of individual member states towards ensuring gender equality and meeting, equal or equitable representation, as it were. Rwanda has had some success. Kenya's still struggling with that, and I'm sure, the other member states are also at some stage of this. So tell us about this bill and what the purpose of it is at the East African Legislative Assembly level.
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. Like my colleague, I think this is a very good opportunity that we can be able to tell the members what is happening at EAC and EALA. I think even before I talk about the bill, I would like to say that this is important because the members of the public get to understand EALA and EAC. Many people still don't understand what EALA is and what they do. We have tried at our level best to popularize EALA, and I think because of what the Third Assembly has done, many people now have come to an understanding of what EALA and EAC are. We went out of our way and really did county sensitization, meet various stakeholders when we're in the country, and one would say that, why were you doing that? But we thought that it's important that the ordinary citizen understands what EAC is. So this is a step also in a good, in the right direction in terms of understanding the bill. Many people have asked me, why do we need a gender bill at a regional level? Because we have partner states who have gender bills. Now, one of the things that you have to understand, our assembly is so different. We are the only assembly that has legislative powers. That means the laws that we make are supreme to the national laws, and they must be domesticated nationally. Because for a law to become law, it must be assented to by the 5 presidents. And so that gives it a lot of weight. Now, if you look at the EAC Gender and Development Bill, it's not the first bill that is being moved by a private member. It is a bill, many bills in the assembly have been moved by private members as private members' bills, and they have passed, and they have been assented to by the president.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does this particular bill then hope to do, like you say, at a regional level? A country like Rwanda is doing well, not just locally, continentally, but internationally. Rwanda is setting the pace. Kenya perhaps might benefit from that bill. But talk to us then about the benefits and how that cascades to individual states.
Excellent. The bill seeks to harmonize the various legislations. Now, what we did, we first did feasibility study of all the 5 partner states. We have used reports from countries, from partner state members, to inform the development of that bill. Now, when we talk about gender, we need to move away from the women perspective, because we moved from the women in development to gender and development. Now, the bill is looking at all sectors of development. every time we talk about gender, people think about
Women.
only representation.
Yes, and representation, that's right.
So
yeah.
people think about representation, and right now everybody's thinking, I've met some people who said, oh, you're now trying to sneak in this thing at the back, you know, trying to bring it through the back door so that you make us have many women in parliament. It's not about women. Next time we might have, even in our national parliament, we may have more women than men. So what happens to the men? They will need affirmative action. So it is actually about ensuring that all genders play at an equal level, bringing opportunity to both men and women, not just women. And we are looking at different sectors, from health, education, agriculture, entrepreneurship, trade, food and security, food security, and peace and security. Now, if you look at that, countries like Rwanda may have done extremely well in representation, but Kenya has done very well in education. Kenya is doing very well in the health sector. So you need to look at a balance between all this and borrow good practices from all the 5 countries, then bring it at the regional level. And we are seeking at harmonizing those legislation, which is what the bill is doing, and also looking at the various sectors, so that if we need to borrow a leaf from Rwanda in terms of representation, other countries can borrow a leaf from Kenya in terms of education, in terms of agriculture, in terms of health sector, and that is what the bill seeks to achieve.
I see. So we've talked about the role of the Legislative Assembly in terms of saying it's a supreme organ, and all of the laws that are passed at this level then have to be domesticated, you know, nationally at the individual member states. But some would say that, you know, where EALA and EAC hasn't done very well is in terms of financing its operations. Many countries are behind on their payments, and this then renders the EAC organs, you know, incapacitated to do the work that it does, to even have sittings of the East African Legislative Assembly itself across the member states. So what is that power that EALA can wield over member states? We understand, you know, Burundi is the one that we like to cite, but to be fair, a number of the countries within the region, if not all, are falling behind in their payments.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think that came out very well in our media briefing yesterday with the speaker himself. And that is for a fact. You know, the community, when we all signed in the treaty, is very clear that there is a proper commitment by all the partner states to support the community. And without the political will, then it becomes a big challenge. And we must appreciate of late.
But you're politicians, aren't you? Within the Legislative Assembly.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what, when we are talking now of support, even at the country level. Because you see, the community is made of so many organs. We are talking of the summit, we are talking of the legislature, we are talking of the judiciary and so forth. But then the top organ, and this is the summit, and these are the heads of state themselves, must also assert themselves and say it is in our interest to make sure that we support the community.
Does the Legislative Assembly have the power to, you know,
and
at
that
the
is
summit to say, hey guys, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President Paul Kagame, you know, and so on.
And that's why we are putting our voice, because our role is oversight, and we oversight with the executive. And when we are telling them, hey, come on, there's a problem here in terms of funding activities and programs of the community, you need to up your game. Because of late, we look at how the finances of the community have been coming. There's been a lot of delays, and not from one particular partner state, by the way. It's almost all the partner states. We must appreciate. Of course, knowing what the challenges that Burundi is facing of late, it's been quite tough for them. But again, other partner states, is the high time now to come strong and even make sure that they even double their efforts, so that they even put in the gap where could be Burundi and South Sudan could be facing. And that's what the challenge is. I can tell you, and we mentioned yesterday, in the month of actually October, September, we could not even undertake our activities as an assembly, not even as an assembly, but even the community, because there were no finances completely. And therefore, we called upon the partner states, and even the donors themselves were polling out and saying, hey, if their own, they can't support their own. Why do we put in money, kind of this?
All right,
and that's what the challenge has been. But we seem now to have told them, please, and there seems to be some sort of improvement from partner states. But we are still not there. And that funding, that funding still remains a big challenge. And now we tell the partner states here, they need to own this community. This community belongs to the people, And therefore, they must really come up to support this.
All right, so financing is one. Another place where we talk about is, the situations we've seen in the region. Earlier this year, EALA spoke very strongly about the situation in Burundi, but it didn't seem like we were able to intervene in that situation. And largely, we've moved on. We've moved on from the situation in Burundi. I mean, we hear of disappearances. And then there's South Sudan now. Kenya withdrew its troops. 2 batches of troops have already returned. Yeah, the speaker spoke yesterday and he said, we need to intervene, or we need to see what's happening with the situation in South Sudan. But then again, many say the East African community, the Legislative Assembly, should do more to sort out its own problems. Burundi and now South Sudan, those are 2 member states out of 6. So what's the situation now? What are we doing about it? Or do we just issue some very terse statements and say the situation is deplorable?
I'll tell you, Yvonne, and one of the things that the Assembly has done, okay, even in relation to the finances, we pronounced ourselves in the House and we made very strong prayers to that. On matters of Burundi, on matters of South Sudan, we have held motions in the House. We've even had subcommittees, of the House going to even carry out some investigations and coming out with very, very critical reports, which are available even to the members of the public. Now, our role as oversight, we have made it known and we have said it as it is, without sugarcoating anything. Now, the role, unfortunately for us, we are members of parliament who are also diplomats, because of relations. So sometimes, yes, we talk, and I think we have been very vocal at that, but we need to maintain relations because we must hold the community together.
Absolutely, but when we're doing relations, there's people in South Sudan
who are dying.
There's women, there's children, and there's the vulnerable, there's persons with disability.
Yes.
There continue to be disappearances in Burundi. So it's all well and good to have diplomatic relations. But tell that to the people in Burundi and South Sudan. We're friends and we're one.
It is true. I agree with you. I agree with you. And one of the things that, like as Kenya has been very instrumental in the peace initiatives of South Sudan. And Kenya has played a great role, and they want South Sudan to actually stand up on its feet. So when you see Kenya taking such an action, really, it is not that they are not into. In fact, I don't think there is any other country within this community that has done a lot to South Sudan like we have done. Right from the initiatives, even from the former vice president and what he did, and other people who actually played a big role in that.
The CPA.
And this, and even now in Burundi, Kenya put out its best foot forward. They've tried to go out and help, but it is. We even had, the delegation from EALA and EAC that actually went to oversee election observation. We came out with a report, and actually some of the things that were highlighted in that report is actually what ended up coming out. And EALA, as an assembly, I think has pronounced itself. We have had interactions even with the summit members, with the Council of Ministers, and we have told them what we feel must be done. We have also, through our Committee of Regional and Conflict Resolution of the House, they've done investigations. They've come up with a very comprehensive report at that. And it is something that, sad to say, we lost a member of EALA. And from Burundi, and she was assassinated in Burundi.
Right.
So you can imagine EALA cannot just keep quiet because losing one of us was a very big.
Absolutely.
In fact, to put
like
it, I don't want to say
talk
that
about something else,
the political conflicts in the region actually threaten the future of the community, and that is for sure. Political conflicts, and therefore it is why we are saying political commitment and concern we must invest a lot of link to solve this.
Okay,
because now we could be listening.
I'd like us to talk about polythene control. And again, it seems like in the continent we look to Rwanda. You know the rules. When you land at Kigali and if you have a plastic bag, that's the rules around that. So talk to us about polythene control and why this is something that the Legislative Assembly has taken on quite seriously. What is the status with that, and why do we need to sort of harmonize what we have across the region?
The spirit of the integration right from the beginning. We had seen a situation where we need to harmonize laws in the community. Harmonization would mean, or approximation, would mean that the laws that exist in different partner states, almost is conformity. And that is where there's been a problem. I can assure you now, most of the partner states' laws are so far from the treaty, and therefore there's a conflict from the laws that exist and the treaty itself. And therefore, as an assembly, we have been trying to tell partner states, try to harmonize or approximate the national laws with the treaty itself. And therefore, the issues of best practices, and we remember the issue of the polythene control bill. It came in the second assembly, but it was defeated actually by some countries, in the partner states, even including Kenya. Some of the stockholders were not interested in it. One, because they felt if it comes, it will affect industry, it will affect employment and so forth. But therefore now going forward, and if we want to save the environment, we are saying Rwanda has been doing so well in this particular aspect. Why can't we go that direction? Why can't we harmonize and get that best example? And therefore now the BSM bill again is being introduced as a private member's bill by Honorable Patricia Jabakika from Rwanda. Yeah. And I think from look of things, there's a lot of support. Tanzania now seems to be also now heading to that direction. Right. In fact, now it is Kenya that we need to encourage. And you remember manufacturers in Kenya were saying, let us get more time so that does not affect employment, investment, and so forth. Yeah. But the mood now, as it were, I think we are likely now to go a better place. And it will be coming up. We are likely not either to discuss it at committee level or at the assembly level. But the idea is that we seem to be now agreeing, indeed, that is the way to go.
All right. I want to give you a minute to just conclude your closing thoughts, why this is important, why we should, start to focus on what EALA does and its mandate.
I think it's important to focus on what EALA does. For a long time, Kenya was taken like the big sister. We say big brother, but I say it can also be a big sister.
Like that.
And for many years, people look at Kenya, but times are changing and things are changing. We need to be alive to the situation. And the reason why Kenyans were not alive to EAC and EALA is because they were in a comfort zone. And they thought, after all, we have the industry, we have
the biggest economy,
best currency. But things, it's not like that anymore. And we need to look at our exports and within the EAC. How are we doing? We need to look at so many other sectors. How are we doing? And Kenyans must now begin to put their best foot forward, understand what the region is, what integration is. We have been doing, by the way, county sensitizations. We've gone to almost 16 counties, and we just telling people what they need to understand about integration. So for us, I think even as we do the plastic and polythene bag, we say it is a good bill. But we also need to look at it progressively because we don't want to just tell somebody who has invested billions of shillings to shut down their industry. So, but we are also saying we must take care of the environment. So how do you create the balance? And this is what the Assembly will be discussing. And I hope that we will come to a good conclusion when it comes to knowing matters integration and also just let people understand that on matters peace and security, we have a committee that deals specifically on that.
All right. Thank you very much. Honourable Peter Mathuki and Honourable Nancy Abisai. I'm afraid we're out of time from the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Remember, the East African community has 162 million people living within the region's 6 countries. So please do follow that, and we'll definitely keep you updated on the sittings, as we have done, by the way. We tend to follow the sittings wherever they are in the East African region, right here on KTN News. Thank you. We'll definitely keep up to date with that. Let's move on to other news making headlines around the world. And to the US, President-elect Donald Trump has released a video message outlining priorities for his first 100 days in